In downtown Portland's converted warehouse district, a 19-year-old trafficking survivor was about to face the family that had betrayed her. What started as a routine volleyball game took a shocking turn when she collapsed from a devastating blood disorder. Jhersey Brown wasn't your typical community volunteer. For 3 years, she had rebuilt from human trafficking, known for her fierce independence. When she encountered aplastic anemia requiring family donors, she had no idea she was walking into an impossible choice between survival and safety. What began as a medical crisis would become a reckoning with her past. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The volleyball sailed over the net in a perfect arc, and Jhersey Brown moved to meet it. Her muscles responded with the fluid precision that 3 years of healing had built. Calculated steps, controlled breathing, eyes tracking the ball's descent. The community center's afternoon light streamed through tall windows, casting geometric shadows across the polished floor, where a dozen teenagers laughed and called out encouragement. "Nice setup, Jay." Alex Rivera's voice carried across the court from where he refereed the game, his easy grin splitting his face. At 22, he moved with the confident swagger of someone who'd learned to command respect on the streets. But his eyes never stopped scanning the room. Always watching. Always protecting. Jhersey spiked the ball with satisfying force, driving it past the opposing team's defense. The kids on her side erupted in cheers, and she found herself smiling, genuinely smiling, for what felt like the first time all week. These moments at the Eastside Youth Center had become sacred to her. "Point goes to Team Chaos," Jordan Park announced from the scorekeeping table, their voice carrying warm authority. Sam Torres sat cross-legged on the bleachers, laptop balanced on their knees, fingers flying across the keyboard. The 18-year-old rarely looked up from their screen during these sessions, but Jhersey knew Sam was listening to every word. The ball came back over the net, and Jhersey moved to return it. But something was wrong. Her legs felt heavy, unresponsive. The world tilted slightly, colors bleeding at the edges of her vision. She reached for the ball anyway, muscle memory driving her forward even as her body betrayed her. The collision with the floor came as a surprise. One moment she was airborne, the next she was sprawled across the polished wood, her cheek pressed against the cool surface. "Jhersey!" Alex's voice cut through the sudden quiet, sharp with alarm. He pounded across the court while Jordan appeared at her other side, their social work training evident in the way they assessed her condition without making a scene. "I'm okay," she said automatically, pushing herself up on her elbows. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. The exhaustion that had been building for weeks crashed over her like a wave. Sam had materialized beside them, laptop tucked under one arm, their dark eyes scanning Jhersey's face with analytical precision. "You've been tired a lot lately," they observed quietly. "And those bruises on your arms aren't from volleyball." Jhersey glanced down at her forearms, where purple-yellow marks dotted her skin like scattered paint drops. She'd been finding them for weeks, on her legs, her ribs, places where she couldn't remember bumping into anything. "You're seeing a doctor," Alex said once the teenagers had dispersed. It wasn't a suggestion. "Urgent care clinic on Morrison has walk-in hours until 8, Sam announced, already pulling out their phone. "Dr. Sarah Martinez." "Good reviews online." The urgent care clinic smelled like antiseptic and artificial lemon. Dr. Martinez turned out to be a small woman with kind eyes, who took Jhersey's collapse seriously without making her feel fragile. But when Dr. Martinez pressed her fingers against the lymph nodes in Jhersey's neck, her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "I'd like to run some blood work," she said after the examination. "Basic panel just to rule out common causes." The call came during dinner the next day. They were gathered around their salvaged dining table in the converted warehouse apartment, sharing Thai takeout when Jhersey's phone buzzed. "Miss Brown? This is Dr. Martinez. I have your blood work results, and I'd like you to come in to discuss them." Something in the doctor's tone made Jhersey's appetite disappear. Around the table, conversation died as her chosen family registered the change in her expression. Is everything okay? Jhersey asked. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come in this evening? Doctors didn't stay late for good news. Dr. Martinez's office felt smaller and the evening quiet. She gestured for Jhersey and Alex to sit, then settled behind her desk with careful professionalism. Your blood work shows some concerning abnormalities, she began without preamble. Your white blood cell count is significantly low, as are your red blood cells and platelets. I'm referring you to a hematologist for further evaluation. The appointment with Dr. Chen at OHSU was scheduled for the following morning. The hematologist was a slight woman with graying hair and steady demeanor who explained the bone marrow biopsy procedure with practiced efficiency. The call with results came 4 days later while Jhersey sat alone at the kitchen counter, pretending to grade papers. Ms. Brown, this is Dr. Chen. I have your biopsy results. Jhersey set down her red pen and took a careful breath. Okay, you have aplastic anemia. It's a condition where your bone marrow doesn't produce enough blood cells. In your case, it's severe. The words seemed to rearrange themselves in the air. Jhersey had researched the condition obsessively, reading medical journals until her eyes burned. What are my options? She asked. The most effective treatment is a bone marrow transplant from a compatible donor. Ideally, a sibling or close family member. Do you have any siblings, Miss Brown? The question landed like a physical blow. Jhersey closed her eyes, seeing the faces she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Marcus Brown, her father, whose gambling addiction had destroyed their family. Uncle Vincent, who had presented the, quote, job opportunity that had led to 6 months of hell. No siblings. And my parents are dead. The lie came easily, worn smooth by repetition. I see. Well, there are other options. Immunosuppressive therapy has success rates of about 30 to 40%. A bone marrow transplant from a matched sibling has success rates closer to 90%. 30 to 40% versus 90%. The numbers echoed in Jhersey's head as Dr. Chen explained treatment protocols. When Alex returned from the community center, he found her exactly where he'd left her, papers scattered across the counter. We need to talk, she said finally. She told him about the diagnosis, about the treatment options, about the stark mathematics of survival. She watched his face cycle through disbelief, anger, and something that looked like grief. So we find your family, Alex said finally. No. The word came out harder than she'd intended, sharp enough to make Alex flinch. Jay, if there's a chance. There's no chance. She stood abruptly, knocking over her water glass. Those people sold me, Alex. They traded my freedom for money, and when I disappeared, they probably celebrated. That was 3 years ago. People change. Not those people. The certainty in her voice surprised even her. Vincent Brown doesn't change. My father doesn't change. They're the same people who destroyed everything they touched, and I won't let them near this family. Alex was quiet for a moment, watching her with steady patience. So what do we do? He asked. Jhersey looked around the kitchen, at the mismatched furniture, at the photographs covering the refrigerator, documenting 3 years of chosen family moments. This was her real life. These were her real people. We try the immunosuppressive therapy. 30 to 40% isn't nothing. But even as she said it, she could see the doubt in Alex's eyes. They both understood what those odds meant. Later that evening, after Jordan and Sam had absorbed the news with their characteristic blend of practical support and emotional devastation, Jhersey retreated to her room. She sat on her bed with her laptop, cursor blinking in the search bar, and fought the urge to type her father's name. She'd built this life by walking away from the past, by refusing to let it define her present. The idea of reaching back into that darkness felt like a betrayal of everything she'd fought to become. But 30 to 40% wasn't 90%. And as much as she wanted to pretend otherwise, she wasn't sure she was brave enough to face those odds alone. Through the thin walls, she could hear her family's muffled voices as they tried to process the impossible situation. They would do anything for her. She knew that with bone-deep certainty. The question was whether she was strong enough to let them. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for the glass of water on his nightstand. the movement triggering a cascade of memories Jhersey thought she'd buried. 3 days had passed since Dr. Chen's devastating news, and sleep had become impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she was 16 again, standing in the cramped kitchen of their Baltimore row house, while her father counted bills with shaking fingers. "Temporary work," he'd said then, not meeting her eyes. "Just until I get back on my feet." The warehouse apartment felt suffocating in the pre-dawn darkness. Jhersey pulled on sweatpants and padded to the kitchen, where she found Alex already awake, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at his laptop screen with hollow eyes. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. Alex looked up, and she saw her own exhaustion reflected in his face. "Been researching alternative treatments. Clinical trials, experimental therapies." He gestured at the screen, which displayed page after page of medical journals. "There's a new immunotherapy approach in Germany, but I'd need family medical history for most trials." Jhersey sank into the chair beside him, wrapping her hands around the warm mug he slid across the table. "I know. I've been reading the same articles." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching Portland wake up through the tall windows. The familiar sounds of their neighborhood, delivery trucks rumbling past, the coffee shop owner raising his metal gate, usually brought Jhersey comfort. This morning they felt like artifacts from someone else's life. "I have to tell you something," Alex said finally, his voice carefully controlled. Something in his tone made Jhersey's stomach clench. "What?" "I know where they are. Your biological family. I've been keeping tabs on them since we found you." The words hit her like a physical blow. Jhersey set down her coffee with exaggerated care, fighting the surge of betrayal that threatened to overwhelm her. "You what?" "Not actively monitoring. Just checking in occasionally. Making sure they weren't looking for you." Alex's hands twisted around his mug. "Your father's been in and out of rehab programs 3 times in the past 2 years. Your uncle, Vincent, he runs a logistics company now. Legitimate on paper, but you didn't think to tell me this?" Jhersey's voice rose despite her effort to stay calm. 3 years, Alex. 3 years you've been keeping secrets about my life. I was protecting you." "From what?" "Information about my own family." Alex's composure cracked, revealing the raw fear underneath. "From them finding you. From you deciding to go back. From..." He stopped, running both hands through his hair. "Do you have any idea what it was like that first year? Watching you wake up screaming every night? Seeing you flinch every time a stranger looked at you too long?" Jhersey remembered. The hypervigilance, the panic attacks triggered by unexpected touches, the way she'd check and recheck the locks on their door before she could sleep. Alex had been her anchor through all of it, patient and steady even when she'd pushed him away. "That doesn't give you the right to make decisions for me," she said, but some of the anger had leaked out of her voice. "I know." Alex met her eyes directly. "I was wrong. But I was also terrified of losing you." The sound of footsteps on the metal stairs announced Jordan's arrival. They appeared in the kitchen doorway, laptop bags slung over one shoulder, ready for their morning classes. But they stopped short when they saw the tension radiating between Alex and Jhersey. "Everything okay?" Jordan asked, their social work instincts immediately recognizing a crisis in progress. "Alex has been monitoring my biological family without telling me," Jhersey said flatly. Jordan's eyebrows rose, but they didn't look entirely surprised. "For how long?" "Since the beginning." "And you found what exactly?" Jordan set down their bag and pulled out a chair, settling into mediator mode with practiced ease. Alex pulled up a browser window he'd apparently prepared for this conversation. Marcus Brown, 54, currently residing at Cedar Hills Recovery Center in Oregon City, 3rd stint in 3 years. Vincent Brown, 52, CEO of Pacific Logistics Solutions based in Seattle. No arrests, but the FBI has investigated the company twice for suspected human trafficking connections. Jhersey's blood turned to ice. Twice? Nothing stuck. Vincent's smart. And he's got good lawyers. But the pattern suggests he never really left the business that... Alex stopped himself before finishing the sentence. But they all knew what he'd been about to say. The business that had bought and sold Jhersey, like merchandise. Sam's voice drifted down from the loft area where they'd been sleeping. The Cedar Hills facility has visiting hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I can have Marcus's intake records by this afternoon if you want them. All three of them looked up in surprise. Sam rarely participated in family discussions unless directly asked, preferring to observe and process information in their own quiet way. How long have you been awake? Jordan asked. Long enough. Sam appeared at the railing wearing oversized pajamas and clutching their omnipresent laptop. Also long enough to trace the Pacific Logistics corporate structure. It's shell companies all the way down, but I found some interesting connections to ports in Seattle and Los Angeles. Jhersey felt the walls of the warehouse closing in around her. Her chosen family had been investigating her biological family, had been living with this knowledge for years, while she'd believed her past was safely buried. Does everyone know about this except me? She asked. No, Jordan said quickly. I had no idea about any monitoring. But they hesitated, clearly weighing their words. I did wonder sometimes why Alex was so confident that your family wasn't looking for you. Most traffickers don't just give up when merchandise disappears. The clinical term, merchandise, sent a shiver down Jhersey's spine. It was accurate, but hearing it spoken aloud by someone she loved made the old trauma feel fresh and raw. I need air, she announced, standing abruptly. Jay, wait. Alex started to follow her, but Jordan caught his arm. Let her process, they said quietly. This is a lot. Jhersey made it to the building's roof before the panic attack hit. The familiar symptoms crashed over her in waves. Racing heart, shortness of breath, the sensation that her skin was crawling with invisible insects. She'd learned coping techniques over the years, breathing exercises and grounding methods that Jordan had taught her. But this time, the fear felt too big to contain. She was back in that factory again, surrounded by the industrial hum of machinery and the constant smell of chemical dyes. Back to being property instead of a person, valued only for what her body could produce. The roof door opened behind her, and she tensed, expecting Alex's heavy footsteps. Instead, Sam's lighter tread approached cautiously. Brought you a jacket, they said, holding out Jhersey's favorite hoodie. It's cold up here. Jhersey accepted the offering gratefully, wrapping herself in its familiar warmth. Sam settled beside her on the concrete ledge, close enough to offer comfort, but not so close as to feel overwhelming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Alex loves you, Sam said after several minutes of comfortable silence. Sometimes that makes him stupid. Despite everything, Jhersey found herself almost smiling. Is that your professional assessment? My personal one. Professional assessment is that you're all operating from trauma responses, which makes logical decision-making approximately impossible. They sat quietly, watching Portland's morning traffic build below them. From this height, the city looked manageable, contained. Real life felt much more complicated. Do you think I should contact them? Jhersey asked finally. My biological family? Sam was quiet for so long that Jhersey wondered if they'd heard the question. When they finally answered, their voice was careful and measured. I think you should make whatever choice you can live with. But I also think... Sam paused, seeming to weigh their words. I think running from something gives it power over you. Sometimes facing it is the only way to take that power back. Even if facing it puts everyone I love in danger? Especially then. Sam's dark eyes met hers with surprising intensity. Because the people who love you? We're going to face that danger anyway. With or without your permission. The truth of that statement settled into Jhersey's bones with uncomfortable certainty. Alex would do anything to save her life, even if it meant confronting her past. Jordan would research every angle and advocate for whatever choice Jhersey made. Sam would dig into digital records and uncover secrets that were meant to stay buried. They were her family, and families, real families, face danger together. There's something else, Sam said quietly. Something I found this morning while I was digging into Vincent's business records. Jhersey's stomach clenched. What? Recent activity suggests he's expanded operations. More shell companies, more port connections. Whatever he's doing now, it's bigger than what he was doing 3 years ago. Sam met her eyes directly, and some of the financial patterns suggest he's been looking for someone. Spending money on private investigators, digital tracking services. The implications hit Jhersey like a cold wind. He's been looking for me. I can't prove it, but the timeline matches. The searches started about 6 months after you disappeared. Jhersey closed her eyes, feeling the weight of choices she'd thought she'd already made. Her uncle hadn't simply moved on after losing his investment in her. He'd been hunting her, patient and methodical, waiting for her to surface. Which meant that contact with her biological family wasn't just a medical necessity. It was an inevitability that had been building for 3 years, whether she'd known it or not. The question was whether she would face that inevitability on her own terms, or wait for it to find her. The coffee shop on Burnside buzzed with morning energy, but Alex felt like he was operating underwater. 2 days had passed since the rooftop conversation, and Jhersey still wasn't speaking to him. She'd retreated into the careful politeness she'd used during her first weeks with them, functional but distant, a clear signal that trust had been damaged. You, Rivera? The voice belonged to a middle-aged woman with steel-gray hair and tired eyes. She wore a leather jacket that had seen better years and carried herself with the kind of wary confidence Alex recognized from his own street days. Elena Volkov. She slid into the booth across from him, studying his face with the analytical intensity of someone accustomed to reading people for survival. You look younger than I expected. You look exactly like I expected. Alex had found Elena through the underground network of trafficking survivors and advocates. Whispered recommendations passed between people who'd learned to trust carefully. Thanks for meeting with me. Elena signaled the waitress for coffee before responding. Your message mentioned Jhersey Brown. I haven't heard that name in 3 years. You remember her case? I remember all the cases they made me drop. Elena's voice carried bitter edges. Especially the ones involving kids who deserved better. Alex leaned forward. She needs help. Medical help that requires family contact. Elena's coffee arrived, and she wrapped her hands around the mug like it was an anchor. Let me guess. The family that sold her is the only family that can save her. Something like that. And you want me to what, exactly? Walk up to Marcus Brown and ask nicely for his medical records? Alex pulled out his phone, showing Elena the research Sam had compiled overnight. We need someone who understands how these people operate. Someone who knows how to approach them safely. Elena scrolled through the documents with professional efficiency. Her expression grew darker as she absorbed the details of Vincent's expanded operations and Marcus's repeated rehabilitation attempts. Vincent's gotten smarter since I last tracked him, she admitted. Better lawyers, cleaner business fronts. The FBI has been trying to build a case for 2 years. Will you help us? Elena set down the phone and studied Alex's face for a long moment. Why should I? I lost my job, my pension, and my professional reputation the last time I went after Vincent Brown. What makes you think this time will be different? Because this time, we're not trying to take him down. We just need medical information from Marcus. And you think Marcus will cooperate? The man who sold his own daughter? Alex felt something cold settle in his chest. People change. Addiction recovery, guilt, 3 years to think about what he did. People like Marcus Brown don't change. They just get better at justifying their choices. Elena's voice softened slightly. But that doesn't mean he won't help. Guilt can be a powerful motivator, especially when it comes to dramatic gestures. She pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. I'll look into this, but I want to meet her first. Jhersey, I need to know what we're risking lives for. Alex pocketed the card, feeling something like hope for the first time in days. She's been hurt enough. If you're not serious about helping, I'm serious about not getting anyone killed. Elena stood, leaving money for her coffee. Marcus is at Cedar Hills Recovery Center. Visiting hours are Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. But Alex? She fixed him with a steady stare. If we do this, we do it my way. No heroes, no unnecessary risks, and no lies between family members. The pointed look she gave him suggested she knew more about his secret monitoring than he'd shared. Understood. Elena nodded once and walked away, leaving Alex alone with his cooling coffee and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Marcus Brown looked smaller than Alex remembered from the surveillance photos. 3 months of sobriety had stripped away the bloated appearance of active addiction, leaving behind a man who seemed to have folded in on himself. He sat across the visiting room table with his hands clasped tightly, knuckles white with tension, while Elena reviewed the consent forms they'd brought. Medical records, Marcus repeated, his voice hoarse from disuse. For Jhersey. Your daughter has aplastic anemia, Elena said without preamble. She needs family medical history and possibly a bone marrow donor. You're the only biological family we've been able to locate. Alex watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions, surprise, guilt, something that might have been hope. The man looked genuinely shocked to learn that Jhersey was alive, which was either excellent acting or proof that Vincent hadn't shared his suspicions about her survival. Is she... Marcus swallowed hard. Is she okay? I mean, besides the medical thing. She's built a good life, Alex said carefully. No thanks to you. Marcus flinched, but didn't defend himself. I know what I did. I know what I am. But if she needs help... We need your complete medical history, Elena interrupted, pulling out a tablet. Both sides of the family, going back as far as you can remember. Blood disorders, cancers, genetic conditions. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus provided information with the desperate eagerness of someone trying to earn redemption through cooperation. His mother had died of leukemia at 57. His father's side carried a history of heart disease. Jhersey's mother had been healthy until the car accident that killed her when Jhersey was 14. What about siblings? Elena asked. Jhersey's potential matches would most likely be immediate family. Marcus went very still. I don't have any siblings. We're not asking about you. Elena's voice carried the patient authority of someone accustomed to extracting uncomfortable truths. We're asking about Jhersey's siblings. The silence stretched long enough that Alex felt his protective instincts kick in. Something was wrong with this line of questioning. I never. Marcus started, then stopped. His hands began to shake. Jesus! She doesn't know, does she? Know what? Alex's voice came out sharper than intended. Marcus looked directly at Elena, as if recognizing a fellow professional. Before I met Jhersey's mother, I was married briefly. We had a daughter, Grace. But the marriage fell apart when my gambling got bad, and... He stopped, seeming to realize the implications of what he was saying. Elena leaned forward. Where is Grace now? I don't know. Her mother got full custody, moved away. Changed their names. I haven't seen Grace since she was 8. Marcus's voice cracked. That was 20 years ago. Alex felt the ground shift beneath him. Jhersey had a half-sister she'd never known about. A half-sister who might be a genetic match for bone marrow donation. We need to find her, Alex said. No. Marcus's response was immediate and panicked. You can't approach Grace. If Vincent finds out she exists... Vincent doesn't know about her? Elena asked. He knew about the first marriage, but he never paid attention to the kid. Grace was just noise in the background when business was discussed. Marcus was breathing hard now, the institutional calm of the recovery center cracking around him. If you start looking for her, if Vincent realizes there's another family member... He'll what? Alex demanded. Marcus met his eyes with the desperate honesty of someone who had nothing left to lose. He'll use her, just like he used Jhersey. Vincent doesn't see people as human beings. He sees assets and liabilities and opportunities for profit. Elena made notes on her tablet with clinical efficiency. We'll be careful. You don't understand. Marcus reached across the table as if to grab Elena's arm, then caught himself and pulled back. Vincent has been looking for Jhersey. He's never stopped looking. He invested money in her training, her conditioning. She represents a significant financial loss. The word conditioning hit Alex like a physical blow. He'd known intellectually what Jhersey had endured, but hearing it described in such clinical terms by her own father made rage surge through his system. If he finds out about Grace, Marcus continued, He'll use her as leverage to get Jhersey back. 2 assets instead of 1. Elena closed her tablet with decisive finality. Then we make sure he doesn't find out. But Marcus, if Grace is a genetic match, she might be Jhersey's only chance for survival. Marcus buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. I destroyed one daughter's life. Now you're asking me to risk destroying another's. We're asking you to help save them both, Alex said quietly. The visiting hour ended, with Marcus agreeing to provide more detailed medical records and a DNA sample for testing. But as they prepared to leave, he grabbed Alex's sleeve with desperate fingers. Tell her I'm sorry, he whispered. Tell her I think about her every day. Alex pulled free without responding. Some apologies were too small for the damage they tried to address. Grace Morrison's hands stopped moving across the keyboard the moment Elena and Jordan appeared in the doorway of the pediatric ICU break room. 28 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she wore scrubs decorated with cartoon animals, and the kind of calm competence that came from years of helping children through medical crises. Grace Morrison? Elena asked quietly. Grace looked up from her laptop, where she'd been updating patient charts. Her eyes, the same dark brown as Jhersey's, immediately went wary. Yes? Are you parents of one of my patients? We're here about your father, Marcus Brown. The color drained from Grace's face. She closed her laptop with deliberate care and stood, scanning the break room to ensure they were alone. I don't have a father by that name. Your legal name was Grace Brown until you turned 18, Jordan said gently, their social work training evident in the way they kept their voice low and non-threatening. You changed it to Morrison, your mother's maiden name, when you started college. Grace's hand moved unconsciously to her ID badge, where her current name was printed in bold letters. What do you want? Elena pulled out her phone, showing Grace a recent photo of Jhersey that Alex had taken at the community center. Do you recognize her? Grace stared at the image, her breath catching audibly. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Same bone structure, same stubborn chin, same eyes that had seen too much too young. Who is she? Grace whispered. Your half-sister? Jhersey Brown. Elena swiped to show more photos. Jhersey laughing with Jordan, helping kids at the youth center, sleeping peacefully in the warehouse apartment. She was born after your parents divorced. You've never met her. Grace sank back into her chair, staring at the images with something between wonder and terror. I don't understand. Why are you showing me this? Jordan leaned forward, their voice gentle but urgent. Jhersey has aplastic anemia. She needs a bone marrow transplant from a family member. You might be her only chance. No. Grace's response was immediate and panicked. No, I can't. I have children. 2 kids. If Marcus finds out where I am... He already knows about the genetic testing, Elena said. We approached him first for medical history. But, Grace, he doesn't know your current name or location. He hasn't seen you since you were 8. Grace's hands were shaking now. She pulled out her own phone, scrolling to a photo of 2 young children, a boy about 6 and a girl maybe 4, both smiling at the camera from a backyard swing set. I built this life by disappearing from his world completely, she said, her voice tight with controlled fear. No contact, no digital trail, nothing that could lead him or his associates back to me. His associates? Jordan asked carefully. Grace's laugh was bitter. You think Marcus operated alone? My stepfather was involved in trafficking before I was born. I remember men coming to our house, hushed conversations about shipments and, quote, inventory. I knew what kind of man my father was long before I was old enough to understand the words for it. Elena and Jordan exchanged glances. Vincent's network was larger and older than they'd realized. We can protect you, Elena said. I work with federal task forces that specialize in... No. Grace stood abruptly, backing toward the door. I've seen what federal protection means for families like mine. Witness relocation, new identities, years of looking over your shoulder. I won't put my children through that. She paused at the doorway, looking back at Jhersey's photo one more time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but no less determined. I'm sorry about your friend, but I can't risk my family's safety for a sister I've never met. Grace walked away, leaving Elena and Jordan alone in the break room with unanswered questions and a sister's rejection that felt like a death sentence. Grace's text arrived at 3 a.m. Meet me at Pioneer Courthouse Square tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone. Jhersey stared at the message on Jordan's phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. After Grace had walked away from Elena and Jordan at the hospital, they'd assumed that Avenue was closed forever. But something had changed the pediatric nurse's mind during the long hours between rejection and dawn. I should come with you, Alex said for the 10th time as they approached downtown Portland. The autumn air carried the scent of rain and coffee from the surrounding food carts, but Jhersey barely noticed. Her entire focus was centered on the woman sitting alone on a bench near the square's center. She said alone, Jhersey replied, though her voice lacked conviction. The idea of meeting blood family without her chosen family's protection felt like stepping into a void. Grace looked smaller in person than in the photos Sam had found online. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and clutched a disposable coffee cup like a lifeline. When their eyes met across the square, the family resemblance hit Jhersey like a physical force. You must be Jhersey, Grace said as she approached. Her voice carried the same slight rasp that Jhersey heard in her own speech when she was nervous. And you're the sister I never knew existed. Jhersey settled onto the bench, leaving careful space between them. Thank you for changing your mind. Grace was quiet for a long moment, studying Jhersey's face with the clinical intensity of someone accustomed to making life-or-death assessments. You look like our grandmother, Marcus's mother. She died before I was old enough to really remember her, but there are photos. What made you decide to meet? My son asked me why I was crying. Grace's smile was brittle around the edges. Kyle's 6. Old enough to notice when something's wrong, but too young to understand complex explanations. I told him I'd learned about a family member who was sick. She pulled out her phone, showing Jhersey the same photo Elena had seen. 2 children on swings, faces bright with innocent joy. He asked if we were going to help them get better. And I realized I couldn't explain to my children why I'd choose not to help a dying relative without also teaching them that family is conditional. That love has limits. Jhersey felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. I understand if you can't risk. I got tested this morning, Grace interrupted. Preliminary genetic screening. The results won't be back for 48 hours, but the technician said the initial markers look promising. The words hit Jhersey like an electric shock. After weeks of dead ends and impossible choices, the possibility of a compatible donor felt almost too large to comprehend. Grace? If Vincent finds out, he won't. I made sure. Grace's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent 20 years staying invisible. I used my maiden name for the testing, paid cash, chose a lab that doesn't share data with insurance networks. If I'm a match, we can proceed carefully. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching Portland's afternoon crowds flow around them. Jhersey found herself cataloging similarities. The way Grace tucked her hair behind her left ear when thinking, the slight slouch of her shoulders that suggested someone accustomed to making herself smaller. Can I ask what happened to you? Grace said finally. After our father. After Marcus sold you? Jhersey had told this story before, to therapists and social workers and police officers who needed facts for their files. But sitting beside her half-sister in the autumn sunlight, the words felt different. More personal. More real. Labor trafficking. A factory operation in an industrial district outside the city. 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, sleeping in shifts in a converted warehouse. She kept her voice clinical, detached. I escaped after 6 months with help from other girls. Made it to a shelter, then to a youth center where Alex found me. Grace's hands tightened around her coffee cup. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize for him. I'm not apologizing for Marcus. I'm apologizing for not knowing you existed. For not being there when... Grace stopped, seeming to weigh her words. I knew what kind of man our father was. If I'd known about you, maybe I could have... Could have what? You were a kid yourself when Marcus lost custody of you. Grace nodded, But Jhersey could see the guilt settling into her features anyway. Survivor's guilt, she recognized. The irrational weight of wondering if you could have prevented someone else's trauma. "Tell me about your children," Jhersey said, changing the subject to safer ground. Grace's entire demeanor shifted, the maternal pride evident in every word, as she described Kyle's obsession with dinosaurs and Emma's determination to befriend every animal she encountered. As she talked, Jhersey felt the strange sensation of glimpsing a life that might have been stable family dinners, bedtime stories, the ordinary magic of childhood that her own past had never included. "They're why I have to be careful," Grace said when she finished. "Not just about Vincent, but about everything. They're the first good thing I've ever built that no one can take away." Jhersey understood. She'd felt the same protective fierceness about her chosen family, the desperate need to preserve something precious in a world that specialized in destroying beautiful things. Grace's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and immediately went pale. "What is it?" Jhersey asked. "Kyle's school. He's sick. Fever. Vomiting. I need to pick him up." Grace stood quickly, gathering her purse and coffee cup. "But Jhersey, I meant what I said about the testing. If I'm a match, we'll figure out how to make this work safely." She paused, seeming to wrestle with something internal. Would it be okay if I hugged you?" The request was so tentative, so careful, that Jhersey felt her throat close with unexpected emotion. She nodded, and Grace's arms came around her with the gentle firmness of someone accustomed to comforting frightened children. For a moment, Jhersey allowed herself to imagine what it might have been like to grow up with this woman as her sister. To have someone who shared her history but had escaped the worst of it. To have family that felt safe. When they separated, Grace's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'll call you when the results come in." She walked away quickly, leaving Jhersey alone on the bench with the autumn wind and the weight of possibility. For the first time since Dr. Chen's diagnosis, she felt something that might have been hope. But across the square, partially hidden behind a food cart, a man in a dark jacket lowered his camera and reached for his phone. Vincent Brown's network had found what they'd been looking for. The surveillance photo arrived on Vincent Brown's phone while he was reviewing quarterly reports in his Seattle office. The image was grainy but unmistakable. Two women on a bench in Pioneer Courthouse Square, their family resemblance evident even through the telephoto lens. His niece Jhersey, very much alive, sitting beside Grace Morrison. Vincent set down his coffee with deliberate care. After 3 years of expensive private investigators and digital tracking services, his missing investment had finally surfaced. And she'd led him directly to the daughter he'd forgotten existed. "Sir?" His assistant knocked on the office door. "Your 3 o'clock is here." "Cancel it," Vincent said without looking up from the photo. "Cancel everything today. I have family business to attend to." 300 miles south, Sam's monitoring software triggered an alert that sent ice through their veins. Vincent's digital accounts showed sudden activity, wire transfers to known associates, encrypted communications with contacts in Portland, booking confirmations for private transportation. "We need to move. Now." Sam burst into the warehouse apartment's main room, laptop in hand, where Alex was pacing and Jhersey sat frozen on the couch. "Vincent knows. About Grace, about the meeting, about everything." Alex stopped pacing. "How long do we have?" "His plane lands at PDX in 4 hours. But he's got people already in the city." The surveillance photo was taken by someone local. Sam's fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up flight manifests and hotel reservations. 3 associates booked rooms downtown. Professional muscle, based on their records. Jhersey's phone rang. Grace's name appeared on the screen. "Don't answer," Alex started, but Jhersey was already picking up. "Grace? Are you? Someone's watching my house." Grace's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Black SUV parked across the street since I got home. Kyle's still sick, and Emma's at daycare, but I can't leave to get her because—" "Get the kids and go to the nearest police station," Jhersey interrupted. "Right now. Don't pack anything, don't wait." "The genetic test results came back," Grace said quickly. "I'm a match. 95% compatibility. But Jhersey, if they find Emma... The line went dead. Alex was already moving, grabbing their emergency bags, a precaution they'd maintained since Jhersey's first year of recovery. Safe house in Gresham. Elena's contact. We leave in 5 minutes. What about Grace? Jhersey asked, but she already knew the answer from Alex's expression. Elena's handling it. Federal task force is moving on the daycare and Grace's house simultaneously. Sam was packing their equipment with practiced efficiency. But Jay, even if we get everyone to safety, Vincent's not going to just disappear again. He's committed now. Jhersey felt the weight of 3 years' worth of careful stability crumbling around her. Vincent had found them, just as she'd always feared he would. But this time, he wasn't just coming for her. He was coming for the sister she'd just discovered, for the innocent children who'd never asked to be part of this nightmare. Then we end this, she said quietly. One way or another. The hunter had found his prey. But Jhersey was no longer the terrified 16-year-old who'd been sold for gambling debts. She had family worth fighting for, and 3 years of healing that had taught her the difference between survival and surrender. Vincent Brown was about to learn that some investments carried unexpected risks. The Federal Task Force briefing room smelled like burnt coffee and institutional desperation. Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Jhersey's hematologist, spread surveillance photos across the conference table like tarot cards predicting disaster. Vincent Brown's associates had been photographed outside Grace's children's daycare, the community center where Jhersey volunteered, and 3 different hospitals in the Portland metro area. He's not just looking for leverage, Agent Chen explained, her voice carrying the flat professionalism of someone who'd seen too many trafficking cases. Brown's network has expanded significantly since we last investigated him. Seattle, Los Angeles, Vancouver. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar operation with political connections and enough legal protection to make prosecution extremely difficult. Jhersey sat between Alex and Elena, fighting waves of nausea that had nothing to do with her medical condition. Across the table, Grace held a sleeping Emma while 6-year-old Kyle colored obsessively in a Justice League coloring book, his fever finally broken but his world forever changed. What are our options? Elena asked. Agent Chen pulled up a digital map showing Vincent's known locations and travel patterns. We can offer witness protection for all of you. New identities, relocation to different states, federal monitoring until we can build a case strong enough to... How long? Grace interrupted. How long would we have to stay hidden? The silence that followed was answer enough. Dr. Martinez's voice crackled through the conference phone. Ms. Brown's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without treatment, we're looking at weeks, not months. The bone marrow transplant needs to happen within the next 2 weeks for optimal chances of success. Jhersey closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible mathematics. Witness protection meant safety, but also meant months or years of hiding. Her medical condition meant she didn't have months or years. And involving Grace and witness protection meant destroying the stable life she'd built for her children. There's another option, Elena said quietly. We use the medical procedure as bait. Vincent wants Jhersey alive. She's worth more to him healthy than dead. If we can control the circumstances of her treatment, we might be able to draw him into a situation where federal agents can absolutely not. Alex's voice cut through the room like a blade. We're not using Jay as bait for anything. Alex, Jhersey started. No. I won't watch you put yourself in danger for people who sold you in the first place. The words hung in the air like a slap. Grace flinched, her arms tightening protectively around Emma, while Kyle looked up from his coloring book with the sharp attention children developed when adults fought. Those people are my family, Jhersey said quietly. Grace is my family. Her children are my family. And this family, she gestured around the table, doesn't abandon each other when things get dangerous. Alex's face went very still. Jhersey recognized the expression from their first year together, when his abandonment issues would surface in moments of crisis. I can't lose you, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I won't survive losing you. Jordan reached across the table to touch his hand. None of us will. But that's exactly why we have to take the risk. Agent Chen cleared her throat. If we proceed with using the medical procedure as an operation, it would require Ms. Brown to be admitted to the hospital openly, under her real name. Vincent would know exactly where she is. But you'd be ready for him, Jhersey said. We try to be. But there are no guarantees in this kind of operation. Sam, who had been quietly typing on their laptop, suddenly looked up. There's something else. Vincent's financial records show he's been moving money, liquidating assets, closing accounts. This isn't just about recovering an investment anymore. What do you mean? Elena asked. He's planning to disappear after this. Whatever he's going to do, Portland is his last stop before he vanishes completely. The implications settled over the room like a cold fog. Vincent wasn't just coming for Jhersey and Grace. He was coming for a final confrontation that would either give him everything he wanted or destroy everyone who could testify against him. He's going to kill us, Grace said quietly, her clinical training allowing her to voice what everyone else was thinking. All of us. Whether we cooperate or not. Jhersey looked around the table at the faces of everyone she loved. Alex's desperate protectiveness, Jordan's quiet determination, Sam's analytical courage, Elena's professional resolve, Grace's maternal fierceness, and the innocent trust in Kyle's and Emma's young faces. Vincent Brown had spent 3 years hunting her, patient and methodical. But he'd made one crucial miscalculation. Jhersey wasn't the isolated, vulnerable teenager he'd trafficked anymore. She was surrounded by people who would fight for her, and she'd learned the difference between being protected and being empowered. We do the operation, she said finally. We use the bone marrow transplant as bait, and we end this. Agent Chen nodded grimly. I'll need 24 hours to coordinate with hospital security and position our teams. You have 12 hours, Jhersey replied. My body can't wait any longer than that. The die was cast. Tomorrow, Vincent Brown would get exactly what he'd been hunting for. But he would find a very different prey than the one he remembered. The bone marrow transplant suite at OHSU felt like a fortress under siege. Federal agents disguised as hospital staff moved through corridors with practiced casualness, their earpieces hidden beneath surgical caps and white coats. Grace had been prepped for the donation procedure in an adjacent room, her children safely hidden in a federal safe house with Jordan and Sam standing guard. Jhersey lay on the hospital bed, IV lines snaking from her arms, watching Alex pace the small space between machines. His nervous energy filled the room like static electricity, and she could see the barely contained violence in his movements, a street fighter's readiness for battle that 3 years of domesticity hadn't entirely erased. He's here. Elena's voice crackled through the hidden microphone. Vincent just entered the main lobby with 2 associates. Hospital security is tracking them through the elevator system. Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, her usual calm demeanor stretched thin with tension. We're ready to begin Grace's procedure. The extraction should take about 2 hours, then we can start your preparatory treatment. Jhersey nodded, though her attention was focused on the tactical communications filtering through Elena's earpiece. Vincent was moving systematically through the hospital, checking floors, looking for the transplant unit. 4th floor, Elena reported. He's asking about patient directories at the nurses' station. Alex stopped pacing. How long before he finds us? Minutes, Agent Chen's voice responded. Teams are in position. Remember, we need him to make the first move. No federal crimes until he commits federal crimes. The absurdity of legal technicalities in the face of mortal danger almost made Jhersey laugh. Vincent Brown had spent years trafficking human beings, but they needed to wait for him to threaten her life before they could act decisively. A soft knock interrupted her dark thoughts. The door opened to reveal Marcus Brown, flanked by 2 federal agents. Jhersey's father looked smaller than she remembered, his prison-issue clothing hanging loose on his diminished frame. His eyes found hers across the room, with desperate hope. What is he doing here? Alex's voice was dangerous. Agent Chen stepped forward. Mr. Brown agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for witness protection. His testimony about Vincent's operations will be crucial for prosecution. Marcus took a tentative step toward Jhersey's bed. I know you don't want to see me. I know I don't deserve. You're right, Jhersey interrupted. You don't deserve anything. But you're here, so talk. Marcus's face crumpled slightly, but he pressed forward. Vincent's not just coming for you. He's planning to eliminate everyone who knows about his operations. Grace, your friends, even me. This hospital? It's supposed to be his final cleanup. The tactical communications exploded with urgent chatter. He's split up. Two associates moving toward the transplant wing, Vincent heading for the emergency exits. He's not planning to leave. Alex moved closer to Jhersey's bed, his hand finding hers. Whatever happens. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing the room in red shadows. Through the tactical feed, they could hear chaos erupting throughout the hospital. Fire alarms, evacuation announcements, the controlled panic of a building under siege. Vincent triggered the emergency systems. Agent Chen's voice was tight with professional frustration. He's using the evacuation as cover. Marcus grabbed Jhersey's arm with surprising strength. He's coming. Vincent's coming, and he won't leave witnesses this time. The door burst open. Vincent Brown filled the doorway like a nightmare made flesh, his expensive suit incongruous with the tactical vest underneath. His eyes found Jhersey immediately, and his smile was the same cold expression she remembered from her trafficking nightmares. "Hello, niece," he said calmly. "We have some unfinished business to discuss." Behind him, his associates held weapons that made the federal agents' protests seem suddenly inadequate. Vincent had come prepared for war, and he'd brought the battlefield to the place where Jhersey was most vulnerable. The final confrontation had arrived, and all their careful plans were dissolving into the kind of violence that had destroyed her life once before. 6 months later, Jhersey woke to sunlight streaming through the warehouse windows and the sound of children's laughter echoing from the main room. Her body felt strong again. The transplant had taken hold, her blood counts stable for 3 months running. Vincent's network had collapsed after his arrest, his associates cooperating in exchange for reduced sentences. Grace appeared in the doorway, Emma balanced on her hip while Kyle raced toy cars across the floor. "Ready for your checkup appointment?" Jhersey smiled, watching her chosen family expand to include the biological family she'd found worth saving. Some bonds were forged by blood, others by choice. The strongest were built by both. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.